All right, everybody. I should be live, but that's all hearsay for now. So if you can hear me and you can see me, let me know in the chat and we can get this whole party started, which I generally like to think of it as being a party, although a preparedness party sounds kind of like a gathering of nerds, which I'm totally okay with. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of things tonight, but obviously one of the things that I was trying to address was the fact that it feels like there's being gas put on the fire. Things are heating up, and we definitely need to be aware of where we sit in the sense of this whole global conflict situation, as well as what's happening here at home. So I wanted to go ahead and make sure everybody was on the same page, and getting together weekly here every Monday night is a good way to do that. We obviously know that being ready right now above all is extremely important, and that being proactive in our preparedness is the only way to kind of keep moving forward, knowing that things are going to get more and more difficult as time goes on. I'm seeing a lot of 5x5 going on. Everybody is saying it looks good, sounds good. I appreciate all that. Kay Barnes, hello. We got Oki Khan, East Tennessee Preparedness, Fish Sticks. We got Carrot Top, Jen and Bama, and we got Colleen, Rich Pickett, all these good people. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. Now, here's what we need to talk about, okay? A lot of things that are happening, and the escalation is not going away. It might not seem like it's as big of a deal as maybe a month ago because things haven't happened so quickly, yet this whole situation is continually getting worse, maybe at a begrudgingly slow pace, but still it is happening. And this is something that we need to pay attention to because people tend to focus on what makes their life easier, right? So we like to focus on the idea that this is calming down and getting a little bit easier, when in reality, it's probably getting worse, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about some of the reasons why that's the case. And hello from Florida, says Tina West. We got Kill It and Grill It here as well. Peace Train of America, Apartment Prepper, Mad Max, Rudolph Eckerd. Good to see everybody, okay? Now, let's just jump right into it. As par the course is what we do here every week. If you guys are new here, make sure you guys subscribe and jump in every week and come talk to everybody. But what we like to do here is talk about what's happening in the world, what's happening to us here in the United States, as well as in other countries, and how to be better prepared for it. And what we're going to talk about first is this situation revolving around Sweden and Finland agreeing to submit their NATO applications, okay? This is supposed to happen mid-May. It could happen sooner, but here's the problem. Look, there's not really a problem with anyone wanting to be a part of NATO. The problem is that the timing is very bad. And why I say that is because, yes, for those countries, it might make sense in the sense of making sure that they have some kind of alliance backing in case any additional conflict comes out of the current situation happening over there. But at the end of the day, any more membership to NATO, especially in proximity to Russia, is going to be problematic and create more of an escalation, which is going to create retaliation or at least some kind of reaction from Russia, which is going to push people to feel that there's more and more of a threat. And anytime there's a threat that people are concerned about, they're going to react to it. And this is going in the direction that we don't want it to go in. Regardless of what everybody thinks, when it comes to being preppers and everything else, we don't want to actually see these things happen that we talk about and prepare for. Look, I just went through a power outage here where I live. It only lasted less than a day. But at the end of the day, like, I still would have rather not had a power outage. I won't lie to you. Yeah, I got to use some of my gear and make sure everything worked properly. But at the same time, it's just better to not have one. So this is the same situation here. These different nations joining NATO would cause more of a problem, regardless of whether or not it's a benefit for them. On the grand scheme of things, it's not a good situation for all of us in the sense of wanting to avoid escalation of the current conflict. Now, we know that Russia has already said they would have to re-examine their strategic posture if Finland was to join NATO. We know Finland is a country of preppers, basically. And as a country and as a government, they have done a lot when it comes to building bunkers, making sure they have their civilians prepared for an imminent threat and everything along those lines. But a lot of that's because, they live right next door to Russia. So that being said, all this is going to do is be a provocation, okay? Provocation is not what we need right now. Poking the bear, and when you say that quite literally in regards to Russia, is a bad idea. And yet this is going to continue because people are they're scared, right? And it's an opportunity for these governments and these authorities to throw their hat in the ring and say, hey, well, what about me? I wouldn't mind being part of that whole deal, And next thing you know, you're going to have more people thinking the same way, and it's going to create more and more problems. So this is one of the first things of escalation we're going to discuss tonight. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about as usual, but at the same time, these are just the things that we have to pay attention to, because honestly, my hope was that this whole thing would either be over with or at least be de-escalating at some point here soon, and it completely looks to be the opposite. Regardless of fault or regardless of blame or any of the things that people like to throw around when conversing about this particular conflict, at the end of the day, it's bad for everybody. It's bad for you and I. It's bad for anyone who lives in Europe. It's bad for anybody who lives pretty much anywhere in the world. And of course, there's other countries that we have to pay attention to as well. And we will pay attention to them because we're going to talk about that stuff here as well. So, Gray Man Prepping, good to see you. Exile Reviews, glad you are here. Thank you so much for being here and modding. The mods are what keep these things moving. Got Northern Girl Hobbies as well. And a lot of the mods have their own channels. There's also some other great channels here in the chat as well. And make sure you diversify. Always make sure to get information from multiple sources. Create your own ideas and perspectives as to what's happening in the world, and then apply it to your personal preparedness. Not everybody knows everything, including me. I don't know everything. I do the best I can to formulate an opinion on current events and things that are happening based on research and based on what it is that I am exposed to. So keep that all in mind. Now, Mad Max, thanks for being here. Ilea, good to see you. Glory Bound, good to see you as well. Alex Lopez, hello from Houston. Hello, Alex. I have family in Houston, so we're probably family, right? All right. Now, let's go ahead and jump over here to some of the other things that are going on, all right? So Russia themselves, they have a lot of things to say, okay? The Joe info, I don't know why it tried to hide your message, but because it was upside down, I guess. But yes, you got to research everything. Trust me on that. This is definitely true. And even as well researched as anybody can be, you still might be wrong, and never be completely 100% solidified in your determination, because there's always that 0.001% chance of that not being the case, right? And if that's the chance, that chance exists, well, we should prepare for the alternate version of what it is you already assume to occur, right? And these are just the way I kind of look into things sometimes. Kelly T, good to see you from Houston as well. Now, other things are happening. And here's some of the stuff that's coming out on, just as soon as today, basically. But so Lavrov basically came out and said, look, we are trying our best to reduce the risk of a nuclear war, but that's a serious risk right now, okay? Them saying this publicly has a lot of different facets to it, right? There's a lot of reasons why a country would want to come out and say something like that. It's like a veiled threat in many ways. Hey, by the way, this risk is really high right now. We're going to do what we can to not have any problems regarding that, but the risk is just really high. It's just kind of an obvious throw of shade, you might say, right? I guess that's how somebody in like medieval England would say that, but it's fine. Anyway, this stuff is happening, and these authorities from different countries are coming out and saying things that should definitely concern you. And obviously, Lavrov is Putin's right-hand man, and we have a lot of reasons to believe that, this is just more of their campaign in the sense of state-ran media. But either way, this being put out there in the sense of foreign entities that have extreme amounts of nuclear power at their control, that are willing to just put it out on the table as if this is a legitimate threat, should concern everybody. It's not something we should just brush off like, oh, this is more saber rattling. Like, this isn't North Korea. I don't think anybody assumes that, but I think some people may have gotten used to that concept because of North Korea acting the way they do. And for so many cry wolf situations to happen in the past based on countries like that one, to see this happening with a country like Russia, and then just to be able to say, well, we hear this kind of stuff all the time and it never happens. Well, that's easy to say, except for this is Russia, not North Korea. This is a country that has more nuclear stockpile than any other country, at least on paper, and at the same time is in a current hot conflict engagement. So definitely considerations to keep in mind. Oki Khan says the elitists don't care because they have bunkers. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Everyone talks about like, well, they wouldn't want this stuff to happen because economically it doesn't make sense. But at a certain point, economically, the elitists are past the point of the basic person's economics mattering as much as they may be used to, especially when moving into the digital realm. And we're at a situation right now where people who have that kind of disposable income are going to do what's best for them and then just move on. And they're probably aware of things that you and I are not, in the sense of how dire the situation is going to get. So yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, Oki Khan. Now, Oath taker, I get it. I think there's some truth to that. I think that there are people pushing getting into this conflict for a lot of reasons, some of them probably political. And I would think that some of them are obviously economically induced in the sense of the military industrial complex. But at the same time, this is where we're at. So with what's happening here, we have Lavrov basically saying, like, look, we're doing what we can to limit the possibility of this situation, but there's a good chance that, it still could happen. We're at a high risk let's just say conversion right now that we need to try to avoid. And that concerns me, and it should concern you. Look, I'm not here to try to scare everybody. That's not the goal of these conversations. The goal is to share information and just stay on top of what's happening in a way that helps us be better prepared for it, right? If the threat of the day is food shortages, then we prepare for that with a focus on making sure we have access to food, making sure we maybe have ways to produce, and everything else related to maintaining a level of intake. But when we also talk about a hot conflict occurring right now where the implications could eventually lead to a nuclear exchange, we should probably look into that too, right? So that's why we have these conversations. It's not about fear. It's about making sure we can stay on top of it and not be afraid of anything. And, just to reference this storm we just went through again up here, I mean, I wasn't even supposed to have power today, to be honest. And either way, I was going to jump on and make a live stream happen because I was just going to plug all my stuff into all my backup power, and my Wi-Fi was still running because it's on a backup battery generator, and we would have been fine. And we could have had this conversation either way, maybe with a bad internet connection, or maybe things would have been a little spotty. So what? We make it happen, and as preppers, we can just do that. But the fact that a lot of people were freaking out and losing their minds about one day without power and having to go to shelters because they couldn't stay warm and stuff like that. I mean, look, it's good that our community came together and tried to keep people comfortable and warm and made sure they had what they needed in the sense of a roof over their head. But at the same time, the amount of people who needed those things concerns me, because I'm just like, man, like, where you live, right? It'd be like living in Florida and never assuming you'll ever get flooded, never assuming you'll ever have the power go out, never assuming your windows or your trees or your car will be damaged due to a storm. Of course that can happen. So why wouldn't you prepare for it, right? And that's what we're doing here now. So T-Rex wonders why, there isn't some sort of like imminent surrender situation, right? Well, I don't have the exact answer to that. But what I will say is, like, honestly, for the average person around the world, I think that would probably be a good scenario, right? Get this thing over with and let's stop, escalating the threat of a possible nuclear exchange, right? But at the same time, if the same thing was happening here in the United States, nobody would just say, let's just give up because we need this thing to be over with. So there's a lot of different reasons why. And I think there's a lot of interesting theories as to why there's such a strong resistance, especially in certain parts of the country. But those are all theories, and we're not going to talk about them because I can't verify the information. And I'll let you jump down those rabbit holes on your own if you would like. So now, let's see here. Let's talk about some other things. Now, this is from a news source. We've been doing this on the weekly, so you guys already know the drill. But this is from a news source that I'm not allowed to, necessarily promote at this point in time. But I like to look at both sides of the conversation as well as the reporting that's happening, getting information the best way that we can. And this news source is coming from a portion of Europe that is not allowed to broadcast in a lot of places right now, right? But here's what they're saying, and this is something that I want to share with everybody, okay? According to this news source, there was a village in Russia near the border that was shelled, okay? And there's 2 incidents that were reported about this shelling of a village in Russia right on the border, and that they're saying, they're looking into the situation and everything else, right? Okay, so this stuff happens. This is in the middle of a conflict, right? We understand that, okay? So that's what's being reported on from that state-ran media from that region, okay? Now, let's go ahead and talk about why this is part of the problem, I guess is what we'll call it, okay? Look, do I expect a country to not react and cause havoc in a foreign country that is currently invading them? No, of course not. But what I do expect is that any of these actions will create an escalation, regardless of whether or not it's warranted or justified. It doesn't really matter in the equation of whether or not this thing is going to escalate. Hey, Greyman Prepping, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, man. I know we talked about jumping on together and having another chat here soon. So let's make that happen, okay? Now, listen, honestly, this whole thing is going to get worse because these back and forths are happening because there's a lot of, obvious reasons as to why. but they're not going to make the situation better. This doesn't help things when it comes to peace talks or any of those kinds of arrangements. This doesn't help anything when it comes to de-escalation. This only puts gas on the fire, right? So what we're seeing now is these dramatic images, right? You got to say it like as if you're a news anchor, because that's how things get done around here. But dramatic images coming from massive fire broken out at an oil depot in Russia around 60 miles from the border, okay? So obviously, you know, these things are probably sabotage or something along those lines, and it's all warranted and justified. Look, if somebody invades your country, I think that gives you the right to go do stuff to them, right? That's just kind of how things work. But that's not going to help things get, you know, more chill anytime soon. We're not going to relax anytime soon because of this kind of stuff. And we also know that we're now attacking, you know, energy and resource sectors and stuff like that, that, you know, obviously hinder another country's ability to keep moving forward in the sense of engagement. But at the same time, it's still going to affect the worldwide resources of what the people need, which is energy, right? So we're going to see more escalation because of these acts. We're going to see our strain become more difficult over time, especially when you see depots like this being attacked. If more and more of those go down, the price of oil most likely keeps going up, especially if we start seeing more embargo style situations, or not just sanctions, but, you know, blockade scenarios where they're not allowing Russian energy into other countries and whatever it might be. I expect the price of oil to keep going up. It's going to get very, very expensive. And at the same time, these acts, whether or not they're justified, right, are going to create more escalation. So we're watching this happen. It's being reported. We're seeing it happen. Huge smoke plumes coming out of these oil depots that are now on fire. And obviously, this is going to cause more and more problems. Now, look, what we can learn from this as a preparedness community is what to expect during a situation if we are ever to encounter something like this in our own countries, right? And look, a lot of people will say this will never happen in the United States. I totally get that. I understand. I would say that the probability of that is extremely, extremely low. But at the same time, it's not zero. That being said, a lot of people are here in the chat from other countries too. Other countries probably like Sweden or Norway, countries that are very close to that area, as well as countries like New Zealand and Australia. There's a lot of people from all over the world that face different levels of possibility and probability of these types of scenarios unfolding. So what we can learn from these situations is that you're going to have back and forth. It's never going to be one-sided, and that the things that will be targeted will most likely be things that impact the daily lives of the average person, like the energy sector. Things that can definitely slow down a war machine, but will also hurt you at the gas pump. So these are things to keep in mind. And when infrastructure is targeted, it's because it's the most impactful thing that can be accomplished without having some kind of a, you know, on-field engagement between two different battalions. Like that stuff just doesn't happen the same way as it used to, right? We're in a different era, which means a different era of war, which means a different a strategy when it comes to impacting the foreign entity as much as possible without losing as much manpower as possible. So weird ways for me to say that, but I had to say it in a certain way to not just say anything crazy, I guess, right? Now, if you're new here, by the way, if you're new to these streams, every Monday we come here at 8:30. I try my best anyway. And at the same time, I do try to avoid certain subject matter or words sometimes because it just causes problems. It just does. And I've tried my best to get as much information out as I can. So that way we all are better prepared and more informed rather than trying to fight upstream. I'm trying to do the best I can with branching out. If that makes sense. Okay. So now, let's see here. Lisa Becknell, my fellow Floridians. Just so you know, I am technically a Floridian, born and raised in Florida. So might be one of the reasons why I'm a strange person. And Florida man definitely runs very thick through my veins. So that being said, what else happens when these escalations occur? What else happens when a country is being attacked and all those kinds of things, right? So it escalates. Things keep moving forward. But you can't just keep everything in-house. It can't just be military versus military, right? That's just not how it's always going to work because, you know, the people will be affected one way or another. And this is just how these things go down. And right now, my whole screen's flashing, so I don't know what that's about. But right now, we're having at least reports, right? And these are just reports, but these reports are saying that Russian hackers are intensifying their cyber attacks against ordinary people. They're not just targeting, you know, the infrastructure or the government or the military or anything like that. According to this article, anyway, like I said, everything with a grain of salt. Make sure you verify your sources and stuff. But according to what I could find here, they're seeing an uptick in Russian cyber attacks on average citizens, right? People who are just trying to live their lives are getting, phishing scams, malware, all that kind of stuff. Now, this might not seem extremely impactful or detrimental in the sense of comparing it to a nuclear exchange, or maybe even the stuff that's happening in the sense of thermobaric weaponry and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is just part of the full circle scenario that's occurring. And it's something that we can learn from, okay? It's noted that a number of information and psychological operations targeting the civilian population across social media and chat messengers is also growing. And I think obviously we could see that throughout all of social media, not just in that region. But regardless of where you are, I think that there's good reason to believe that we're seeing a lot of state-run information being put right in front of our face on a regular basis. Now, the idea here is that they are, when you're trying to win the hearts and minds, that might be part of the program. But I also think that it's a morale situation, right? So there's a time and a place to win hearts and minds, right? We did that in Afghanistan for 20 years. And a lot of that was because we were occupying the area more so than being in what I would say an invasion, right? Which right now what we're witnessing over there is a hot conflict invasion scenario that, will eventually in Russia's mind turn into an occupation. But usually during an occupation, you'll see hearts and minds. This is invasion time. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was more of a morality killer, something along those lines, where it's basically going to push people to believe that they've already lost the battle and that, resistance is futile, right? Without having to quote anything I don't want to necessarily quote, that is what's happening here, okay? And I'm not trying to say I'm part of the Borg, but, I do have a weird tick every so often. So anyway, planetary alignment coming up this week, right? Why do I know that? Borg, they got me. All right, moving on from there, okay? These are things we have to keep in mind. So we're seeing that the average person is being targeted now by cyber attacks. We understand that the state-run media might just put information like this out just to kind of get people more on board, or give them something else to consider, because we know that cyber attacks are so prevalent and so let's just say constant when it comes to normal life, that as people we might get them regardless of a conflict scenario, right? We might be involved with a cyber attack from a different country, from a completely different situation, but now there could be a lot of blame placed on that region and those people, regardless of the original origin, right? So there's a lot of these things that we have to keep in mind. Grisio Nemo, I will be assimilated. This is true. And everyone knows the Borg drinks the coffee, so it's just what has to happen. Now, all right, so Sam Amsterdam, the considering considerers who consider. Exactly. I don't know what we're talking about, but I'm okay with it. Now, let's talk about what else we are dealing with here, okay? So we're talking about cyber attacks. We know that at least in that region, they are moving into attacking the average person, civilians. They're not just holding back for military infrastructure or any of those types of things. So that being said, what is happening here in the United States that we need to pay attention to? Well, there's some things that we should probably pay attention to, and it's not necessarily from the most credible source. And unfortunately, I don't wish I could say that, but honestly, I'm just going to throw it out there, guys. The FBI as a organization, at least when it comes from the director's position, has not had the most spotless track record over the last few years now, have they? So that being said, this is the information that they're putting out, and it's what we have to work with, especially when it's coming from an official source, right? So FBI Director Christopher Wray issued a stark warning about the threat of cyber attacks and espionage from China and what they pose to national security. So this is something to consider, okay? Look, the average person can be attacked by these things just as much as the infrastructure and the military, but we're not just talking about Russia, right? We know that there's a whole nother elephant in the room. And right now, we're being told by the FBI that this is actually a big deal. Let's see here. So Ray, in the 60 Minutes interview, said the threats were unprecedented in history and represented the biggest threat to the U.S. from a counterintelligence standpoint, all right? Now, this is all happening like right now. I believe this article came out yesterday. Okay, so, or no, today. Today is Monday. Yes, how could I forget? Now, that being said, is that really the biggest threat right now? Because if it is, then that should definitely tell you something, especially considering we're dealing with a hot conflict scenario with another foreign adversary who is known to commit lots of different forms of espionage here on American soil, as well as being involved or, supposedly involved with cyber attacks in the past regarding things like the Colonial Pipeline and stuff like that, right? So that's all hearsay. I can't prove any of it. These hacker groups, they know what they're doing when it comes to not being able to necessarily be tracked very easily. And at the same time, anyone can claim responsibility, and then that's just who gets the label. But you never really truly know now, do you? So that being said, this is what is happening right now. The FBI has over 2,000 investigations into Chinese counterintelligence and is opening a new case about every 12 hours. So just keep it in mind, everybody. You're not necessarily safe and secure on the internet. We already know that. But you're also not necessarily safe and secure just because you live in the United States. Yes, cyber is a big Achilles heel for all of us here in this country. Yeah, we might have a very powerful and large military. We might be able to stop people from considering the idea of some kind of actual conflict here on our soil, but they'll find ways to still do what they need to do in the sense of espionage and counterintelligence. And it's coming through cyber, of course. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you and I aren't vulnerable to it. And we are also still at least less than, or more than 0%, possibility of being, attacked at some point in time. Everybody thought Pearl Harbor would never happen, but one day it did. So, and that's just a reminder, okay? Look, I don't have a very high expectation of ever seeing some kind of foreign invasion in my lifetime. However, I still prepare like there might be, because why not? You know what? And at the same time, the stuff that you prepare for when it comes to that can be kind of fun and cool, right? So that actually matters. I don't care what anyone says, but having additional interest in some of the things that you're prepping and actually having passion about it really pushes you to do more of it. So either way, whatever floats your boat, don't say never. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. Now let's see here. Damian Torres says the end is coming. Magic Prepper. We don't know, but it is. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like I've said the end is coming, but I will say the end of what happened in 2019 is already here in the sense of normal life, right? Affordable food, affordable gas, affordable anything mixed with easy logistics and supply chains that ran smooth, and the lack of major foreign conflict in the sense of the possibility of nuclear exchange. None of those things existed in 2019. Here we are in 2022, and I don't think we're going back in time anytime soon. So maybe you're right. I don't know. Let's see here. Little Miss Prepper, hello. Good to see you. Yardbirds, always here. Good to see you. Now, let's talk about China a little bit, right? Because we just segued right from Russia to China through the cyber attacks. Weird how we just did that. It's like reading a book or something. Look, man, I'm just doing the best I can with what I got here, okay? All right, so China. They obviously have some interesting stuff going on. I do want you guys to be aware of this, okay? Now, one thing about what's going on there is we should be getting some takeaways from this. When I say that, I don't mean that we should be concerned about maybe an extreme lockdown scenario like what they're facing right now, okay? But what I will say is that we should be concerned about the idea that some powers that be existed in the world today feel that this is reasonable, feel that they can pull this off, feel that even though they have more than 1 billion people in their country, that the government there can just still do this to them, right? Without any repercussion. And at the same time, people just line up, right? And do what they got to do. So here we are lining up for a testing location, right? This is in Beijing. And the reason they're doing this in Beijing is because Shanghai is still locked down. Nobody's getting tested there because nobody's going anywhere anyway. But Beijing is starting to see an uptick, supposedly, right? And so they're now lining up to get tested and going through panic buying once again. This whole situation from 2 years ago is still sparking panic buying, okay? Now, regardless of the culture and regardless of the social norms of China versus the United States, this should remind you that no matter what, if stuff like this happens again in the future, no matter how many times we've gone through it, there will be panic buying no matter what. And there will also be lots of people standing in line to get tested once again. Okay, this is just how it's going to be. And at the same time, no matter how many times you tell somebody, they're going to go out and panic buy because they never stocked up, even after learning their lesson the hard way the last time. And I'm seeing that right now here where I live. People went out, bought every single generator on the shelf at all our local Tractor Supplies and stuff, right? And now if you go on Facebook Marketplace, there's like 100 generators for sale. So they literally bought a generator and they're going to go return it. Or if they can't return it, they're going to sell it. And it's like, why? Like, just keep it. You literally need it because you needed it. It's not like we're going to just never have a hard, big storm once again. But you know what? They're going to get rid of that thing because it was like $500 and they don't need to spend that on that. They'll just do the same thing again next time, buy one and return it, right? Hope that works out, especially in today's supply chain. But the idea that generators are just always going to be available is a little bit naive nowadays, I would say. Now, look, I'm not going to pay for the subscription they're asking me for, I guess. So at the end of the day, gosh, they let you read it one time, then you come back and it's and it's suddenly locked down, but whatever. So all I'm going to say is that this is happening in Beijing. Shanghai's already locked down, right? We know that China is doing some weird things, all right? And I wouldn't mind in the chat, let me know what you guys think, okay? Give me 1 second. I am going to actually come over here and drop a poll for you guys, okay? Now, I don't track these polls. I don't think YouTube does either, but if they do, don't answer it if you don't want to. I get it, OPSEC and all that stuff. But I like giving you guys some way to interact as well and to kind of put everyone's opinions out there, all right? Mark Fallows, thank you so much. Always supporting the channel, and I do appreciate it. Let's see here. So you guys are going to like this one. I'm not going to say it because I just feel like maybe that could cause me a problem. I don't know. Let's see. We're going to do this, do that. This is great. I like doing this with you all, okay? And so we all know what's causing this situation to be put into place. We know what's causing the extreme lockdown measures, and we know what is causing the new situation in Beijing, which is starting panic buying and everything once again, all over for the, fifth time? I don't know how many at this point. But that being said, you guys tell me what your thoughts are. What is it that they are preparing for? Okay, they're preparing for something, but there's just so much going on there right now. And I get it. You guys, somebody will say in the chat, they have a zero tolerance policy. And I understand that 100%. Get it. Okay. The way this is affecting them and the rest of the world economically is pretty extreme. And we have had enough time now to realize I would say, the capability of this biological situation that it would be hard for me to look at a government, not as a person for, caring about other people, but as a government or a business to go, yeah, that percentage is worth completely shutting down our economy for a large period of time, right? So you guys tell me what you think, because there's some weird stuff happening there. And I don't necessarily know if everything's exactly, face value. But what I will say is we should keep an eye on it. It tells us a few things. It lets us know some information we wouldn't otherwise have. AKA, panic buying is going to be around no matter what. People will still never learn no matter what. Even though you're in a different culture, a different social norm, doesn't matter. You should have figured something out before having to panic buy again, right? Especially living somewhere where there's a zero tolerance policy. And then you come out and just line up to do the thing again, right? So these are just questions I have for everybody. And this is where I'm at with it. Law of the minimum. You know what? We are once we get through some of the snow, we're going to be planting some more stuff in the garden here. But I also want to. We're looking into livestock, so possibly goats, something along those lines. Definitely chickens at some point here. But you know what? I might look at quail too. I think that's a good idea. Luckily, I have an entire flock of geese and pheasants on my property right now. So that always just feels good as a backup, I guess. So now that's what I wanted everyone to kind of keep in mind. There's some weird stuff going on in the world right now from other countries. And I just don't know exactly what is going on. Okay. And I'm just saying that from a skeptical point of view to let everyone know that we should keep an eye on that. But it's not just for, what are they doing in regards to the thing from 2 years ago? It's more about keeping an eye out to say, what's the nitty gritty of this situation? What is the game plan here? And what is it that's so important that they're willing to shut things down to this degree? That's what I would be thinking about. Okay. Now, we got some other stuff here that we need to talk about. And just so you guys know, currently in the poll, the number one option is war. Okay. The last option is outbreak. Okay. And then pretty much tied is famine and economic collapse. And honestly, I think those two could easily be tied together, right? But it is interesting that the majority of the chat feels that what they're doing is more related to the idea of entering a hot conflict in the relative future, more so than what it is that's being exactly reported, right? So this is an interesting thing. This is why I like doing the polls. It just gives everybody kind of a baseline as to what we're all thinking, like, together, and then how we can, I don't know, maybe apply that to our preparedness, right? So if 56% of us here in this preparedness community that's in this chat right now think that most likely what they're doing in the sense of locking everybody down and stuff is in preparation for something more like a conflict than anything else, then preparing for a possible conflict with a country like China seems reasonable, right? Things to keep in mind. All right, now, okay. Oki Khan says control. Definitely get it. And Julius Newman says, unless another version escaped, from a place. Those are the things I have to like be careful with, right, Julius? But no, I get it. I mean, maybe I can't say yes or no to that actually. So this is why we're having these conversations. This is why I like having these chats. Okay. And why I like coffee so much. And guys, I don't think I've ever done this, but I want to show everybody because you guys make all this stuff possible, and I just want you to know that I did get this thing, right? So I got the thing. It says Magic Prepper. It's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for just making this whole thing possible. So I just wanted to share that with you all. It's something I should have shared with you earlier. I got it a little while ago, but I'm not like the biggest fan of like throwing in everybody's face. But thank you all for making something like that happen. Regardless of what you do, getting some kind of like award or whatever for what you do, it has a level of reward to it. So I appreciate that and appreciate all of your support. Now, let's talk about this. Okay, we all know what happened here. You guys know what happened here. I just want to talk about it anyway because this stuff does happen sometimes, right? So, Taiwan News accidentally airs false report of a Chinese invasion. Oh, man, it's Hawaii 2.0, right? Listen, this is not good, okay? This is concerning. Now, why is it concerning? Well, here's the thing. Look, there's a lot of different ways this could have happened, right? Somebody could have hacked the system. Somebody could have been negligent. Back when this happened for Hawaii, when they said, oh, incoming, nuclear strike or incoming missile, right? It was blamed on user error. Someone in the emergency broadcast system department, like, clicked a button or something, right? Easily said, anyone can be blamed for it. Scapegoat, probably got paid out some kind of severance package. You got to go, but thanks for being the bad guy here, right? This is something that is problematic because it gives me a couple things to consider. One, their system is flawed, right? Which means any system related to what they're trying to accomplish here could be flawed in the same way. But two, okay, you broadcast that an invasion is occurring like right now. Okay. A few things happens. One, you don't see anybody panicking, right? Some people panicked, of course, but a lot of people are going to see their cell phone and be like, are you sure? Right. And then we're going to see things like this. We saw this, we saw Hawaii, all that stuff. And people are going to, at least in their head, if not, physically and proactively, research it first before reacting, right? Before moving and getting back home or whatever you got to do, people are going to research it, right? We got to see, is this real? Is this one of those false alarms, right? So this whole situation causes a cry wolf scenario that can be very dangerous because you and I are seeing these things happen, and then we're not going to react the way we need to if we ever receive an alert like this because these things just happen on accident sometimes, right? So these systems are flawed. And unfortunately, I don't think they work the way they're supposed to. And at the same time, we can't trust them. So what does this do? It causes panic, and it causes you and I to have less of a reaction time to these situations. And that is a problem for me, and it should be a problem for you too. Look, if the EBS says, hey, imminent nuclear threat, take cover, and most of the population starts researching it on Google. Is there really a missile coming? Is something really happening? Is this a real event? Is this a drill? Right? And then the rest of the population panics. It's not good for anybody. So I look at these situations, and as a prepper, as somebody who wants to be, I guess, more likely to survive, I think you see an alert like this, you take it seriously and you make moves no matter what. And then if it turns out to be a drill, great. And if not, you did the thing you're supposed to do. But these things keep happening, and it's going to create more and more of a lackadaisical response anytime something occurs because of these different scenarios unfolding. Now, the other thing is that these situations can be used, right? So here's something to keep in mind. You are China. You have this idea about invading Taiwan at some point in time, but you know that they are prepared for it and that they have built defenses up against an invasion from you. So what do? Well, you got to figure out ways to soften their defenses. So what is the best way to do that for the civilian population? Well, you put out false alarms, right? So every time you put out a false alarm, it makes your invasion easier to accomplish because the next alarm is probably false, right? People are less likely to look into it or to be concerned with it as much. It's very much like what happened here. As again, I'm referencing it because it was an event that just occurred for me, but we had multiple warnings for the original blizzard, right? It was a bad storm. Yeah, everyone got the warnings. We all hunkered down. Most of us didn't really lose power, a lot of snow, but we made it through, all good to go. Next blizzard comes, everybody remembers, well, that one wasn't so bad. I didn't even lose power, whatever. It rips down, I think, over 300 power line poles throughout the state. Power's still out for some people in my area. And what happened? Well, a lot of people didn't buy generators or food or anything because the last time wasn't so bad. So this is what happens. And this is something that I would keep in mind that could be happening here in the United States at some point in time, too. If we eventually lose trust in our emergency broadcast system because we've seen too many false alarms go off, then when the big one actually happens, it's going to make it so that many less Americans do something to survive because of being lied to, right? So just things to keep in mind. Now, let's see here. Okay. Alien Prepper, good to see you. Dragon Slayer, hello. Rip Curl Readiness, good to see you as well. Thanks for being here. AOK 412. How many would research reactor panic? Yeah, you want that poll? We could do that. I could do a poll. I think we already got the information from the last one. So let's see here. Okay. I will bust this out as quick as I can for y'all. Okay. And you guys can go. Okay. Now, this is something to keep in mind. These things will probably happen more and more often as things heat up and as escalation keeps continuing. But I think there could be some strategic value for the invading country if these things keep happening because, well, those alarms just don't seem to be very real very often, right? Okay. Now, when it comes to that stuff, okay, and when it comes to the idea of like an invasion, which then would mean obviously nuclear exchange is very possible. A lot of other things come to mind, right? What are you prepared for in regard to that? These are questions you have to ask yourself. So just so you guys know, and I love talking to you guys directly here on the live streams, and this is all good stuff. But you guys know I work with companies. I'm always trying to figure out the best way to get good stuff to everybody, but also find deals on it. So I will tell you guys, I'll put it in the chat, but Mira Safety just gave me a 10% off code for everybody, okay? So if you guys want anything from them, the way to do it is to use this code I'm about to drop in the chat. I'm trying to help you guys out, I promise. And dang, I have to get rid of like letters and stuff. Nothing's working. There. Okay. So if you use the link and then you use the code MAGIC10 at Mira Safety to get gas mask, filters, hazmat suits, anything like that, you get 10% off now. So I worked with the guys over there because, I appreciate everyone's support. I appreciate getting stuff to people and making sure you guys have access to the different gear and equipment you need to survive something like that. But I wanted a way to like give back to everybody too. And I felt like there should be some kind of way to work in a discount for everybody who's willing to support this channel and get themselves more prepared. Mirror Safety was on board with that, so now they got your discount code. So I'm pretty excited about it, and 10% off ain't bad when you're talking about expensive stuff like gas masks and filters, because they aren't cheap. And, you know, I'm not going to lie to you guys, like, preparedness isn't always cheap. And here's something I want you guys to really keep in mind. And we're going to move on to this next issue here very soon, which is actually going to correlate with this conversation pretty well. But, okay, and law of the minimum, yes, I think the brainless people are trying to get your brain. I agree. So here's what I want to say, guys, okay? I think there's a lot of preparedness community people who will prefer to preach the idea of what am I trying to say here? Basically, they prefer the idea of saving money, right? Or I guess you would say living with the idea of shortages rather than surplus. And what I mean by that is that we're constantly looking for, how can I afford this? What can I do? What this is too expensive. What's a cheaper option? Where can I save money, right? And I think that's a pretty common thing, because, you know, I'm sure just like the rest of you and myself, like, we don't have just tons of disposable income, right? So we're always trying to figure out how to best make our money work for us. But I also think that a mindset change can be important when it comes to that, especially in preparedness. So just keep this in mind. If you are constantly trying to figure out, well, I can't afford this food and I can't afford these preps, and I know I need this gear, but it's just too expensive. Okay. Well, are you trying to save money, or are you trying to get more money in order to afford those things? I think that there's something to be said when you are trying to find a surplus rather than stretch everything out based on a shortage or a scarcity of what resources you do have. And yes, we have to sacrifice and we have to do a lot in order to accomplish those goals sometimes. But I think finding additional income streams and finding ways to get more money to get the things you need, rather than trying to find cheaper alternatives, might be the best way to pivot towards the future right now, because nothing is becoming cheaper. Everything's getting more expensive, and nobody's wages are going to meet that expense, right? We're not going to get paid more just because things are getting more expensive. Maybe to a small degree, but never proportionally to what we need. So rather than trying to live off of $10 a week or whatever, to try to like have money in the bank, but then not really be more prepared than you were before, because you're still limiting yourself in the sense of what you have access to, I would shoot for the stars, right? And have a goal of, you know, this week I'm going to spend $10 more than I usually spend because I'm going to earn $10 more. These are things that I would just try to consider at this point in time. I would love to tell everybody that you should live on, you know, a potato and, you know, barely drive anywhere and never have any money, and that's fine. But then at the same time, how can I expect you to actually be prepared for a World War III scenario if you don't have any disposable income to get anything to help your life and your family survive and thrive in an apocalyptic situation? We have to be realistic. If I want an Atlas survival shelter, I'm going to have to spend a crap load of money to get it, and I don't have the money to buy one. So is that something I'd like to do at some point? Yeah. But I'm not going to sit here and wait till they're on sale. I'm going to literally work my butt off to try to figure out a way to put a ton of money aside to buy a freaking bunker one day. And I probably never will, but you know what? I'm going to try. So just something to keep in mind. I see it a lot in the preparedness community, where pinching pennies tends to be the most, I guess you would say, praised way of trying to, you know, be prepared. But honestly, I think having more pennies makes it a lot easier. That's just my opinion. I think you guys should keep that in mind. Never have a mentality of failure when it comes to survival. Always do what you can to be successful, and that will help you move forward in anything that you do. Now, okay, Kill It and Grill It says, food in your pantry worth more than money in the bank. I 100% agree with that, especially with inflation right now. Oh yeah, big time, right? Now, RLRL says, Ron's backed up 8 months, Atlas survival shelters. Exactly. So you know what? I waited too long, but you know why? Because I didn't have $100,000, and most people don't. But you know what? One day, hopefully I do. We'll see. I I don't have extremely high hopes, but I'm going to try. Now, Jeremy Hatt, check out the septic tank bunkers. Yeah, no, totally. I've seen those before, and I think that's not the worst thing, okay? Crazy Cat Lady, I work a second job, and that paycheck exclusively goes to preps. 100%. And you know what? That's the kind of stuff I used to do back in the day. Even though I had a good paying job, it was paying all my bills, but I didn't have the disposable income I needed. So I actually started working secondarily as like a waiter or a bartender every so often to make some extra cash. And that's what I did. And it sucked. And I hated having 2 jobs. But you know what? I had the things that I wanted or needed at the time. So these are things you got to do. Now, I want to move on from a weird rant that I didn't know I was getting into tonight, but I just felt like I needed to share that because you know what? You guys are you're preppers. You're here to be prepared. And there's, the fact that you can look at a World War III scenario conflict right in the face and say, yeah, I'm going to do something about this. Well, I have a feeling you can be very successful in a lot of other ways as well. So no reason to always shoot low. We can all aim high and we're going to make it happen. Okay. So this is what's happening right now. A fifth of the world's container ships are stuck in port congestion. 20% of the world's container ships are stuck because of the whole Shanghai lockdown. Okay. Listen, this is why things are going to get so expensive and so hard to get. Scarcity is huge. Shortages are here already and are going to get worse. And inflation will only get higher. So we do need more money. We need ways to get our preps without emptying our bank accounts every single week, right? So this is where things are going, though. This is why I guess I'm a little bit animated about the whole situation because, like, you're not going to get stocked up and prepped, by not having any money and not spending money. Like we're all kind of screwed right now if we want to keep moving forward in our preparedness, but that's what we got to do. Because at the end of the day, I'm also not going to tell anybody to stop buying food. We literally need more because it's getting more expensive and getting harder to get. And you know what? This storm, I'm going to reference it again. You guys should take a shot every time I reference it or something, right? But this storm, honestly, it's a blizzard that lasted like 3 days, and entire sections of the grocery store were fully wiped out. It takes one emergency to wipe out the entire food supply of a grocery store, okay? Now, exponentially grow that by 100 times if a World War III breaks out suddenly and something happens here in the United States, food's gone literally in an instant. We got to be ready for this. And with a 20% decrease in moving container ships, when we already have the supply chain issues we have, what are we doing? How much better are things going to get? They're not going to get better. They're getting much, much worse. And I know you guys have seen the maps where it's like just Christmas lights all over the ocean of container ships offshore waiting to dock. That is just going to be the way it is for a very long time, I have a feeling, okay? So keep this in mind. Things are not getting easier to come by. I'll reference something that I looked for, and when you go to buy something, right? And so I'm looking at optics, right? And I was looking at a red dot for a handgun, okay? And I was like, man, I really like aim point stuff. So this ACRO or this ACRO, it looks cool, but the P2 is coming out. So yeah, notify me when the P2 comes out. Send me an email, and maybe I'll wait for the P2 because it fixes some of the things wrong with the P1, right? Okay, well, guess what? It's been like a year, and that thing still hasn't been, notified me that it's available because they can't even get the stuff they need in order to manufacture them, okay? Nothing is coming out when it's supposed to. And if there's things you want and you're looking for and you're trying to buy and they're available right now, I mean, that's the story of my life right this second. Waiting on things to come back in stock or just compromising and getting something that'll do the job. So that's where I'm at, and that's probably where a lot of you are too. But these things are just, the way it is right now. It's not where I want to be, but I think that we're finding ourselves in that situation, okay? So, let's see, Mad Max. Someone borrowed a jack and a pry bar off of me today, and they borrowed $20. That's just where it is these days. People are desperate, man. Prepping Fool says, hi, checking in from sunny, warm Florida. You don't have to rub it in my face like that, okay? I remember Florida very well. So, yes, I know it's warm there. Now, I will say, though, good on you for lending that to somebody who needed it. Okay, I get that. Mad Max, we're always trying to help each other. And I want to help my community, and I think we all need to help each other as well. But at the same time, that pry bar, is that a way they're going to get into somebody else's house? Like, you tell me. I don't know. But either way, desperation's high, and things are getting harder and harder to come by, okay? This whole situation is not good. We are not going to find ourselves in a better scenario anytime soon. And when 20% of container ships are docked offshore, I don't know what to tell you. We're in for the long haul here. And keep this in mind. We do have midterm elections coming up, and we all know that things just seem to happen around midterms now, don't they? So keep your eyes out for that. We're in the ramp up towards that time. Who knows what could happen, right? Now, the other thing to keep in mind, let's see. Conserve Friends says LA ports clearing, nothing coming from China. And that could be true. I don't actually know that right off the top of my head, but what I will say is, okay, if the ports are clearing up, that might sound like a good thing, right? Clearing up the congestion, logistics can start moving a little bit easier again, but not if it's because of not receiving anything. Now we're in a different issue, right? So these are all the things that are happening right now. All right. So Rip Curl Readiness says, if you see it and you need it, then get it, because that's just how it is right now. Gardner Josh, good to see you. Thanks for being here and modding. Man, it's just getting tough out there, okay? Now, remember when we talked about the cyber attacks and all that stuff before, okay? Let's get back to the gas on the fire part of the conversation, all right? Because gas on the fire is a big deal. Janet LeBlanc says, here in Maine, people react the same way when a blizzard is predicted, the night before everyone hits a grocery store. Exactly. And look, I went to a grocery store today, and it wasn't because I didn't have any food. It's because I'm trying to keep, my health going in the direction it's been going. So I'm, still losing weight. I'm on a diet, but my diet revolves around mostly like fresh food and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, I just wanted to get out and get some more produce and stuff. And I just didn't, I don't stock things like meat and produce. I don't really depend on refrigeration. Am I fully stocked on food in the sense of being able to eat if I need to in an emergency? 100%. Am I on a diet during that time? No. So things are a little different. But what it did show me is that the grocery store was running, 10 times speed to try to restock everything, get the shelves back up to par. So yeah, things went out very fast, very quickly. And my local grocery store actually had a power outage to the point where they lost a lot of their refrigerated items. So I actually drove to a different one just to get the fresh food that I needed. So it is what it is. But at the end of the day, let's see here. Northern Girl Hobby says, missing a pile of smashed thumbs. And for a second, I didn't really understand the reference because that's my life anytime I use a hammer. But now I get it. So thanks. Yeah, if you guys hit the like button, I appreciate it. I never really say that in my live streams. I don't really mention things like the call to action stuff very often in the live stream. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Now, okay, let's share the next screen. FBI warns of targeted cyber attacks, okay, on food plants amid heightened coverage of fires. Okay, so here's the thing. We're going to talk about the fires situation here. Gas on the fire, right? But the FBI is coming out and saying, look, we got to be careful about this whole thing. And there's potential for cyber attacks on agricultural cooperatives and food plants amid increasing media coverage of recent fires and explosions. Okay. Now, here's the thing. There's two ways to look at this. One is that these are already because of certain attacks or something like that, right? We're being told they're not. Either way. But now we're worried about the idea being implanted into those who can, create these malicious acts because they're seeing what's happening and seeing how people are concerned about it. And they can say, well, let's run with that because they're really bothered by it. But there's also been precedent set of these food cooperatives being hacked in the past. And I had a video about that exact scenario happening quite a while ago. It was a food cooperative out of Iowa, I believe, that was hacked and held for ransom, right, with their ransomware. And at the end of the day, there might have been some correlation with that and Cyber Polygon, but because I couldn't prove that correlation, I didn't mention it in the video, but there's programs like Ag Tools that were part of Cyber Polygon, which are used by a lot of cooperatives throughout the United States in order to manage their inventories and resources and all those things, right? And then you hold that information ransom with a ransomware malicious software attack, and then you gain a lot of money. So this has happened already before, but just not during a conflict time. So now that Russia is engaged in hot conflict and has reasons to retaliate against sanctions and everything else being placed, and there's heightened media coverage as to these fires happening at food processing plants and things of the like, the idea of someone coming out and actually targeting them now, even if they weren't technically targeting them before, is probably higher. So this is all being talked about now. The FBI is letting everybody know that this is actually an issue. And it said, last month, a grain company that operates in several states experienced a Lockbit 2.0 ransomware attack, right? But like I said, this stuff happened last year even, okay? Now, this is something to keep in mind. What are they telling us about this whole food processing fire situation, though, right? And so just to, get you guys a little upset, a little worked up, because I like to do that sometimes. Here's Snopes, how well they are at doing what they do. And they're trying to tell everybody this whole situation is false, right? And what they did is they discovered that the statistics based around these fires at these processing plants are right in line with just any other time, basically. Saying that, throughout the last few years, it's just about the same amount of incidents. None of them are related. Nobody's proven any kind of negative link and stuff like that. Totally fine. But I take everything with a grain of salt, and I also look at any side of the story I can find. And from what I can find, I have reason to believe that there should be some concern there, Okay. Whether or not it is, who cares? I'm going to prepare regardless, even if the concern shouldn't exist, because things are happening. They're in front of our face. And we know that there are implications anytime you support the enemy of an enemy, right? And we are definitely doing that right now. So sanctions, weapons, all kinds of stuff. When you start adding it all together, there's a heightened reason for somebody to act out against us. And I feel that that could easily be done via cyber attacks on some food processing facilities. And if you don't think a cyber attack could possibly, I don't know, create a fire, right? Just keep in mind what happened to that Florida water treatment plant where they made the water basically poisonous by raising the level of lye within the water. So there's a lot of things you can do through cyber attacks that can actually lead to a physical outcome. These are things just to keep in mind. Baltimore Xanax says it's an attack, no doubt. Okay. Let's see. Tom Doolittle, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And just keep in mind, guys, I always say this, but if you're doing super chats, make sure you got yourself squared away too. Okay. And Tom Doolittle, wow. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But here's the thing. Jason says, Ice Age Farmer on YouTube tracks the food stuff pretty good. I agree. Ice Age Farmer gives a lot of good information about a lot of things revolving around food, especially when it comes to agricultural failures, when it comes to shortages, when it comes to supply chain and logistics disruptions. So, yeah, I think so. But I will say that I know he's had issues on the platform quite a few times for reporting on some of that stuff. So, sometimes that makes you think that maybe you're onto something, right? So, yeah, Christian is his name, I believe, and I do like Ice Age Farmer. I definitely get some good information there so often. So, let's see, Baby Yaga Prepper. Sometimes words get flagged. Your comment didn't go through, but I'm still seeing it. Many places in this country have toxic levels in their water. No one wants to talk about it. Yeah, well, yeah, and I believe that there is an initiative. I forget who did this. I want to say it was like Will Smith's kid or something. Right, but they created a way to have clean drinking water in places like Flint, Michigan, to try to help those people, because apparently the government just can't do it. So there's a lot of things out there that are still happening right now. I agree with you, where there's toxic water that doesn't need a cyber attack to be part of the problem, and incompetence at our government level is a lot of the issue most of the time, right? And I did see a lot of people said in one of my recent videos about the fact that the threat is here. And I see Carl Miller said there's sleeper cells in every state. Yeah, of course there are, from multiple different nations, I am sure. But one thing I want to mention is that, look, when you have a situation where the possibility exists, right, for an invasion or a foreign action to occur on our soil, right, as small as it might be, the existence of it is there, right? Yes, I understand that at times our own government is a big part of our problem when it comes to our daily lives and stuff like that. But we can't just write off the threat of other things just because our own government creates a lot of issues for us, right? So yeah, that's part of the problem, of course. But other things are too. So you can't always write something off just because something else exists. Don't do that to yourself. Make sure you keep all options open, right? I think that there's a lot of issues with our own government. Of course I do. Am I a fan of the NFA? Like, no, but these are just things that happen that we have to deal with. But at the same time, is there a threat from overseas that could actually do something here on our soil? Of course there are. Of course there is. So just wanted to put that out there. Now, Prepping Fool, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, from Florida originally, grew up there, spent my first 20 years of life in Florida, and then moved to California for 10 years, and now I'm in North Dakota. So I guess trajectory-wise, it would only make sense for me to end up in like Maine, maybe New Hampshire, possibly North Carolina, maybe next. I don't know, something like that. Not that I have any plan to do that, but it just seems like that's what I'm doing, a weird rotation around the freaking country. So let's see. House of Lamar, can we abolish the ATF? I mean, I guess we technically can. I just, I guess we don't need them, right? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, Jonathan Gardner, buy a Berkey. You'll never regret it. So I'm using my Berkey right now. We busted it out when the power was out. We eventually did run out of our pre-charge tank for our well, and I haven't set everything up yet to have my well fully powered when the power goes out. It is something I'm working on, but I have tons of water storage. And so I figured, okay, well, I'll just bust out the Berkey, throw some of the water I have stored up in it, and we got water good to go. 100% good to go. It tasted fine. Everything was fine. And it was just something that was nice to have. So definitely have a Berkey. You can always do that. Cherokee Survival says, no Northern Carolina, too many people. Well, I get that. All right. But I mean, it's me. So you don't want me there? Come on. We can hang out. It'd be cool. All right. So let's see. Now, Red Narb 77, scale of 1 to 10. How are you enjoying living up here? Okay, here's what I'll tell you 100%. I like the laws. I like the scarcity of people in many ways. I think that we all know SHTF means that people are probably the biggest threat any of us are going to have to deal with. And having less of them is a benefit in many ways. The people here that are here are awesome. I've had great experiences with the community. I've had great experiences with neighbors and friends and people who are willing to help each other out, take care of business. And I think that North Dakota as a whole has a resiliency to it that I really appreciate. Do I like the weather? No, I don't. Do I like the landscape? Probably not my favorite. Is it good for some things? 100%. It's great for farming. It's great for cattle. And it's great for, I don't know, 1,000-yard shots. You tell me. But at the end of the day, I am enjoying my stay here. And I do think North Dakota has a lot to offer that other places don't. And the biggest thing it has to offer that many people aren't aware of is extremely well-paying jobs that are out in the oil field, in the energy sector, where people are making good money with good benefits, with good everything, basically, at the end of the day. Lots of hard work and harsh conditions, yes. But the pay is right, and people do very well for themselves here to the point where they, can buy homes in other states, visit family, do things like that a lot of us don't have access to. And the reason I'm in North Dakota was because of money. I needed to make more money and better my life. So that's some of the sacrifices I was talking about earlier when it comes to wanting to have more access to financial ability rather than always trying to cut yourself shorter. Instead of staying in California where I couldn't afford to prepare and I couldn't afford to buy a home and I couldn't afford to have land, I decided to make the sacrifice to live in much worse weather, but make better money and have more access to the things that actually matter in the sense of being prepared. So these are all considerations to keep in mind. Corporal America says, we appreciate you in North Carolina, Magic. Enough is never enough. That's fair. And I did enjoy my time I have spent in North Carolina. Did some hiking right at the start there, the Appalachian Trail. Did some whitewater rafting. Did some cool stuff in North Carolina. So nothing bad to say about North Carolina. Plus, I think there's some really good people that live there. 704 Tactical's there. I'm pretty sure Such is there. You got some really good other channels that are stationed in North Carolina. So just throwing that out there. Now, let's see. American Citizen says, should have went to Tennessee. Well, Tennessee didn't offer me a relocation package and a really high-paying job that literally paid for me to move across the country without lifting a finger. So that's just how it is, okay? RLRL says the growing season sucks. That is true. However, it is what it is, right? I couldn't grow anything in California because I had like 0.3 acres or whatever you want to call it. So it is what it is. And then MP says you always have fresh water in your water heater. Yeah, of course you do, but I would filter it anyway, especially through a Berkey, just because of things like, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. I wanted to say listeria, but I know that's not the right thing. But at the end of the day, basically you get a buildup of bacteria and other problems when it comes to water heater water because of things like rust and everything formulating inside of the tank, as well as the fact that you have this stagnant water at times anyway in a warm environment. I'm trying to think of what it's called. You guys fill me in. Why am I not able to say it right now? Not listeria. It is something else. All right. So, and I'm sure I could just go ahead and Google it right now, but I don't want to. So now, not Giardia, none of that stuff. I'll just Google it real quick. Let's see. And I know exactly what it is I'm trying to think of. Let's see here. Oh my gosh. Just tell me what it is. Why can't they tell me? And I swear, if it is listeria, I'm going to be very upset. Okay. Somebody's got this. It's not dysentery. You guys, oh, Legionnaires. Brian Ward got it. There it is. Legionnaires. Thank you. Thank you. Legionnaires, okay? And it's the same reason you don't want to drink directly out of a dehumidifier. Yes, you could use a dehumidifier to get water out of the air and into a water tank that you could technically drink if you had no other way to get water, but you had, let's say, solar power and a dehumidifier. There you go, right? But Legionnaires is an issue when it comes to using units like that to obtain water. So if you're going to ever get water out of something like that, it is a good idea to filter it at the very least, if not treat it further than just that. But yes, Legionnaires is an issue. Make sure you guys check out Legionnaires if you're not aware of it, because it is something that can happen from drinking out of things like water heaters, dehumidifiers, refrigerators, and stuff like that, okay? Let's see here. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's just from like air conditioning units and stuff. I don't know. Just look into it, because right now I was drawing a blank before, and now I don't want to give out bad information. Either way, make sure you guys research that kind of stuff. And one thing I did see on a local post, okay, and this is just something to think about, okay? If you have something that's important to you to survive on a daily basis, medically you need it. Let's say you take insulin or something like that, right? The idea that you wouldn't know what to do about your power going out if you have something like that that's a requirement for you to survive is terrible. Do any research you can now to make sure you know exactly what you need to do in regards to something like that. Just like what I just told you about Legionnaire's disease, right? If you are going to drink water out of something like a water heater or a dehumidifier or anything like that, make sure you filter it and treat it rather than just drinking it right out, because you're going to get sick. But by not knowing that, you might just get sick and not realize what's even causing it, right? Because a lot of people tell you, just drink this water and have this water, but, always filter it, because why not? It's not going to hurt you. It'll just make things a little bit more important. But the other thing to keep in mind is I saw somebody post with the power outage. They said, I've got all this medicine in the fridge. The fridge is out. I don't know how long it's going to stay stocked up. What should I do? And it's like, if you have this medicine that you need, how do you not know what to do already? And how do you not have an idea of how long it's going to last, or what temperature range is okay for it, or if you could just put it outside in the snow, or any of those things? I mean, these are just things you should know ahead of time. But by seeing that kind of information, I think, okay, well, this is a good reminder that I need to know these things, right? And as another good example of that, recently I did it was kind of just like a little training event where it was kind of like a Milsim type thing, basically, where we all wore a full kit. We went on a hike and did some target ranging, right? And I was just really bad at it. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was not in tune with my reticle and my scope and my optic, and I didn't have the math memorized to the point where I wanted it to be. And I was just not ranging my targets correctly. So I went through, I did more research, did some studying, and now I have my reticle and my scope dialed in, and I know my ranges really well. But it was just one more situation I went through where I said, man, I can't be out here running around with this highly expensive, high-powered optic and not even know how to use it properly the way I need to. Because it's one thing to shoot at ranges and dial in and know your holdovers, but it's another thing to range something that's static that you don't know how far away it is. And now that I know how to do that quickly and in my head, it's going to make life a lot easier whenever I have to, use something like that in the future. So these are things that are important, and we have to do better at making sure we have all those things squared away before it becomes an issue, right? So just want you guys to be aware of these things, okay? And look, if I'm wrong about the Legionnaires from the water heater itself, let me know. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But I do know Legionnaires is definitely an issue with dehumidifiers. So these are things to keep in mind. And at the end of the day, you guys are all awesome. We are over an hour and 13 minutes now. It's probably time to call it a night. But these conversations are great every single week. I appreciate all of you being here. And don't forget, I got that discount code from Mirror Safety for you guys. And look, I'm not trying to make you go buy a bunch of shit. What I'm trying to do is give you an opportunity to get some of the stuff that might be really important without spending full price if possible. Because, man, that stuff is really expensive. I'm not going to lie. And sorry if I cussed and somebody had kids watching or something. That wasn't my plan. So my bad. I'm sorry, but I let it drop at the very end here now, didn't I? Either way, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. If anybody else wants to chat tonight, make sure you guys check out the Discord. I know Exile Reviews has posted it a few times. I will post it once again just to make sure that we have it. But we do have some good conversation in there. And you know what? It is a privately owned network and platform. So we do have rules and we do have things we can and can't talk about. So do what you can to be chill, right? And we're trying to have a good chill time and have a good conversation. But there's no need to come in there saying anything incendiary or ridiculous because we just don't have time for that, all right? Nobody got time for that. It's a problem, all right? You guys are awesome. That's going to be it for Magic Prepper.